This is the Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. You are watching and listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 5/10/21. Well, the big question is, John, are you buying Dogecoin or was it in your IRA saving for retirement with Dogecoin? What was it?
Hey, Kerry. Well, believe it or not, I bought 100 million Dogecoin for a tenth of a penny, like 6 months ago. So now I'm Bill Gates level rich.
Wow, I'm impressed, man.
Yeah. But then I woke up and realized that none of that actually happened. But Dogecoin is a sign of a bubble. Stuff like this happens at the peaks of bubbles when random assets just catch the attention of hot money and go through the roof. There were, go back to the 1990s, and it's hilarious, the dot-coms that just out of nowhere went from, $1.50 to $150. Stuff like that happened all the time. Dogecoin is just an example of that. And all you can do is put it in the category of Gamestop and NFTs and et cetera, things that are attracting the hot money temporarily and then shooting through the roof. One interesting thing about Dogecoin, though, is that it's not really appreciably different, apparently, from Bitcoin. It's a similar concept. And the reason Bitcoin is this monolith in the crypto world, and the other cryptos are these little pygmies running around at the feet of Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin got out there first and built up a network that made it much harder to hack. So I've been told by a couple of Bitcoin experts. But Dogecoin functions pretty much like Bitcoin does. So, you could make the case that if the price differential is high enough, that it makes sense to buy something like Dogecoin rather than Bitcoin. But I don't know. To me, these are bubble assets. All you can do with bubble assets is try to time shorting them well, and then make 99% on the way down as it goes to obscurity. But that's a hard thing to do because there's always another quintupling possible in any bubble asset at any point in its ascent. And so with Dogecoin, you just can't know. I mean, what were you telling me before we went live, that SpaceX is now accepting Dogecoin as payment if you want to ride on their rockets
on their lunar
outer space?
Yeah, which is great, but who knows when that lunar mission is going to take place, if ever. And hey, you could knock Dogecoin, but I think it had a market cap of somewhere around $100 billion. Now it's about half of that.
But that makes it like a major company. That's probably more than Exxon's market cap right this minute. Or McDonald's or somebody like that. You're up in that category when you're at $100 billion.
So I'll share my theory with you on it. Basically, Elon Musk made a lot of enemies over the time. As he said, he's got Asperger's, and they don't always have the best social graces. And I think this was set up. I think the script was a setup, and getting him to make jokes about Dogecoin was all a setup, and then they sold into it just to make him look bad. Like, look what he did. Isn't he terrible? I don't really think that this was a spontaneous drop because he was making jokes. Now, either that or the people who watch Saturday Night Live just have absolutely no sense of humor, which is a distinct possibility because there's nothing funny about that show. He's about the funniest thing that came on in 10 years.
Well, with Elon Musk, you have to kind of see the whole guy, because he is a flat out bona fide super genius on the one hand, with phenomenal energy and a really interesting vision. You know, he sees things ahead of time and then makes them happen. Very impressive. But he's also kind of an overgrown kid. You know, he's a 9-year-old in a lot of ways with the tools to be consequential in the world. So of course, you know, your 9-year-old kid, you know, if you put them on Twitter and had people reacting to their Twitter posts, they would do all kinds of crazy things. And Elon Musk is kind of playing it that way, you know, the whole Bitcoin and Dogecoin thing. Although I kind of think the Bitcoin thing was illegal, because what he did was he had his company load up on Bitcoin. Then he announced it after the fact and talked up Bitcoin in other ways, making Bitcoin go up. Now, that is kind of sort of insider trading.
But there is no insider trading for kleptocurrencies.
Yeah, I guess not.
Fine insider trading when you don't even know who made this stuff.
You know, I wonder if something is not regulated by the SEC, that insider trading laws don't apply.
There's no insider trading laws on commodities either. You know, you can't, even if you have insider knowledge, like, you know, trading places, you know, the orange crop is bombing, and you go sell it short because you know it ahead of anyone else, they can't prosecute you for it.
But if you're running a company, that is material inside information.
Yeah,
I think.
Perhaps.
Yeah, but anyhow, I think the world, including the SEC, cuts him the kind of slack that you cut a 9-year-old, because they recognize that his personality is not fully formed in terms of impulse control. And that's how he gets away with this stuff, because he's not trying to get rich with Dogecoin or Bitcoin or anything. He's just having fun, making the world dance every time he speaks. So he's just a kid having fun at the rest of our expense. And in that sense, it's, you know, it's not threatening or anything. It's not like Jeff Bezos or somebody who's kind of Darth Vader-like. He's a scary guy. Elon Musk is a big kid. You know, those are, even though their net worths are kind of similar, they have really two different personas, I think.
You know what he's like? He's like the kid in that movie Big, right? He finds a kid in a 20-something-year-old person's body, and, you know, he's just pulling gags and jokes, and sometimes they backfire on him. But I really think this was a setup. That's my opinion. No evidence, purely speculation. Don't take it to the bank. You can quote me on it, though. That's what I believe. But something that isn't a setup: inflation in iron ore and copper. Copper is hitting record highs from 2011. And on the show, we've talked a lot about it. You've got these people, they don't want any mining, but they want everything to work on electric. And it's like, you just can't have both of these. You're either going to mine for copper and other stuff, vital elements, nickel and lithium, so that we can embrace this electrical future, or you're not. You know, you can't have it both ways. So you have to support mining if you support this electrification future. Otherwise, if you don't, you're totally inconsistent.
Oh, yeah. Well, whenever anything's brand new, people don't really understand the totality of it. You know, solar panels are just awesome to most people. You know, they look at solar panels and think, wow, that's so much better than oil and gas. Let's just do it. And they're right as far as that goes. There are a lot of advantages to solar over fossil fuels. But yeah, they have to be made out of something. And so do electric car batteries. And that is both, you know, it's a complication and it's an investment thesis, because we are going that way. You know, we're going to electrify the world. We're going to have electric cars be the most common mode of transportation by 2030, let's say. And we're going to have solar panels be by far the fastest growing new energy source out there for the next 50 years, probably. And we have to get the stuff that is necessary to make that happen, which means really, instead of buying a solar panel maker stock or an electric car company stock, you want to go the picks and shovel route, right? You want to buy the people who make the stuff that go into these things that are going to be everywhere pretty soon. And, you know, that's the miners in fields where there isn't enough of whatever it's going to take. There's not enough copper, there's not enough iron ore, there's not enough nickel right now being produced by mines, which means either we just shut down the whole green economy or we go get more of that stuff. And the guys in the nuclear industry make the same case for uranium, but I'm less comfortable with that whole business for various reasons. So I wouldn't include them in the same story, but probably the same market dynamics are at work there. But yeah, copper has to double for us to go out and find enough copper to wire up the world the way we intend to, and so on throughout the commodities space. So I think that's why commodities are booming now. People see the implications of the new Green Deal, and they're buying in anticipation of that. They also see all the infrastructure building we're going to do. That's not necessarily part of the clean economy, building, rebuilding roads and bridges and things like that, but it still takes commodities to do that. So if the world's going to go that way, you want to own the things that benefit most directly from these big trends, and that would be commodities now. So I don't think they're done running, although there'll probably be a lot of hiccups along the way, but most of these major industrial commodities have to be a lot more expensive than they are to generate the kind of production that they're going to need going forward. So it's a great investment thesis.
Exactly. Hey, by the way, a listener, Alexander P, sent me an email saying, to be fair, Elon did warn everyone about investing and buying cryptocurrencies, but I assume that was after he bought his Bitcoin and perhaps sold it and got the profit from it.
Yeah, that was with Bitcoin at 57,000. He bought his at, I think, 20,000, I want to say. I might be wrong about that, but it's some low number like that. Didn't seem low at the time, but now in retrospect, it seems low. So yeah, but again, he doesn't, I don't think he's operating with a master plan. I think he's a kid just saying whatever comes into his mind. And the world is making those statements consequential because we're all fascinated by him.
Yeah.
But, the world is full of people going, oh, Bitcoin is the greatest thing ever, and Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. That doesn't move the markets. But when Elon Musk says, be careful, don't take big risks with Bitcoin, it has an effect. But that's just a function of who he is.
Yeah, it is. He's just like that Tom Hanks character. And I guess he's always going to be like that. And what people think he's just a huckster and a real pathological liar. I don't buy that. I think he gets enthusiastic. He loves the adulation from the press, and he gets carried away and says things he shouldn't. And the SEC just doesn't want to grapple with him anymore. They're sick of the whole situation. That comes from that.
He should not be exempt from securities laws, though, because remember the personality type we're dealing with. That would create a monster if he figured out that he can do anything he wants to,
Yeah.
So
and screw people up.
Eggs.
Just hey, I'll buy $10 billion worth of cryptos tomorrow, just for the fun of it, just to see what the market does.
Oh, and he would totally do that. He would pick random cryptos and buy a bunch, and so he would be like a Reddit trader. On massive steroids, some kind of superhero Reddit trader who acquired a huge amount of powers all of a sudden. He would be like that in the market, and we don't want that to happen.
If he's listening, there's a few cryptos I'd like him to buy. Ethereum, Cardano, I don't even know why I own these things, Chainlink, Uniswap, and the Graph. So Elon, if you're listening, please buy those 5 cryptos. I have like a fortune riding on it, like not much. I mean, I'm kind of just putting money on the race, even though I have no interest in the race, just to keep me interested in it. When you have, like I made the equivalence of if you have the Cleveland Browns playing, I don't know what team you think of the team. None of them really much matter to me, but the Jacksonville, whatever, Jaguars or whomever, even though I'm in Florida, I don't really care about Jacksonville. That's like another state. The only way to retain any interest in the game is if you bet on it, because if you don't bet on it, and you should bet on each quarter, under and over, you should be betting on all the exotic bets so that you're interested in every pass that takes place, even though you have no underlying interest in the game other than as a gambling proposition. So that's why I'm in cryptos, just for the fun of it. But hey, if I become a billionaire investing in cryptos just for the fun of it, that's not so bad either, but I'm not expecting anything. Hey, we got to talk about this, though. Two things. But first, major gasoline pipeline hack shut down the biggest gasoline pipeline in the country, and they're still fighting to bring it back online. It just shows that these cyber vulnerabilities for terrorism are all over the place. Of course, nobody knows who did it. My guess is it was probably a couple of guys in their dorm room who were bored because of the COVID restrictions and just said, hey, let's just shut down this pipeline. But could have been Russian hackers, could have been Chinese hackers, could have been Iranian hackers. Who the heck knows?
I heard it was Elon Musk.
Oh, well, that's possible.
But yeah, the whole cyber risk is a risk that people really don't understand yet. And it's much bigger than I think market participants give it credit for being. Because yeah, something like this can happen just out of the blue. See, this isn't a risk you see coming when hackers shut down a big system. And the gas pipeline is consequential. It'll apparently make gasoline prices go up this week, right?
Yeah.
But it's nothing compared to the other big systems. I mean, our banking system is all online right now. Most power grids can be hacked and controlled by somebody who just gets a password from an administrator in some local utility. It's really not that hard to hack and shut down our big systems. And it can happen anytime. It's not something that you can prepare for. Like, you can look at political risk in an Africa or an African country where you've got a gold mine and sort of see, okay, is that government stable? Are there rebels? But whatever, you can kind of quantify the risk that you're looking at. But with the cyber attacks, you can't quantify it and you can't see it coming. It just happens. Almost by definition, it happens before anybody sees it coming. And see, I think that alone is worth a 50% drop in the stock market, because stocks, which are basically online assets now, have this risk that is embedded in them now, that somebody can just take out the financial system for 6 months or whatever by invading the banking system online and just shutting it down. And that makes equities a lot more risky than we think of. We think of them as almost risk-free assets because we don't include network risks in our calculation of what our online assets are worth. And, not to say that you should withdraw from all things online, because obviously you can't, but you should be cognizant of the risks that flow from, hackers in China, where China has an entire branch of its army dedicated to stuff like this, or in Russia, where Russian hackers are just really good and their mafia makes a fortune every year by hacking things. So presumably the Russian government also has a, Chinese-esque branch that is aimed at taking us down if they ever have to. So this is real,
As do we. Pentagon's got a whole, they've got contractors scattered all over the world who are hacking systems all over the place. And don't forget who originally designed the internets. It was DARPA. And what does DARPA stand for? Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, I think it is. Mm-hmm. DARPA. So this is and it was even called DARPA Net before it was called the internets. So, hey, what about Vanity Fair? Like, now we've got these progressives who just believe even with the vaccine, you just need to wear a mask forever because it's just the right thing to do, John. Just the right thing to do.
That was a pretty funny article. I think it was Vanity Fair who came out, and the importance of it is that the pro lockdown side is now starting to fragment a little bit as the lockdowns ease up. Like you've got the government coming out and saying, okay, you don't have to wear masks everywhere all the time, and you can have 10 people in a restaurant. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that's coming from the CDC and the World Health Organization now. But there's apparently a significant segment of the population who doesn't want to stop. They don't want to give up their lockdown lifestyle, even though the science now says it's time to give it up. And so there's this argument going on within the segment of the population that thinks the lockdowns were a good thing and believes that we should all be vaccinated and all, you know, that, which is, I think, probably the majority, though not a huge majority in the US. But now they're starting to fragment a little bit with most of them saying, okay, well, now the science says this, so we can ease up. And then a significant minority saying, nope, nope, until, you know, until nobody's got this disease again, you know, until it's just completely gone, we're just going to wear double masks and whether we're outside or inside, yada, yada, you know. So it's just an interesting part of the debate that's going on now.
Well, I knew it was coming to an end. And let me tell you how I knew, because I ordered 100 black masks from Amazon for $9. And the day they came, the rate started plunging in Florida. And now a couple of days later, the governor just gets rid of mask mandates. But there are companies like Publix, the supermarket chain. Actually, Walmart was good. I was there the other day. It just said masks are recommended. And I said, well, thank you for your recommendation, and I'm not going to wear it. So nobody bothered me. Half the people there were just maskless, and I think that we saw Texas, once they got rid of their mask mandate, the rate of COVID actually went down. I'm not saying the two are causally connected, but the fact is, if the masks were so good, they would have been going down before the mask mandate was ended. You know, they would have never happened. But yeah, like some people, they've just gotten used to this lifestyle of fear. They just like being fear-based individuals, and it's hard to give it up. So they're going to have to think of something else. But, you know, John, this is an analog for modern medicine, because you know and I know that most of our ailments, most of our sicknesses are brought on by lifestyle. They're brought on by what you eat and what you put into your body, sugar, etc. And you don't see, all right, you don't see them going after Coca-Cola, which is like one of the greatest contributors. Now, hey, I like a Coke once in a while. When I was growing up, having a Coke was a delicacy. You didn't have it like 6 or 8 of them a day. You had like one a week, or you're at a gas station, you had a quarter, you popped it in the machine. You have it like as a treat. Maybe not a delicacy. That's a little too extreme. It's not a delicacy, but it was a treat, just like a slice of pizza. This before people lived on this crap. So, you know, but what's the medical profession going to do if the whole country starts eating properly? The 80% of them would be out of a job. It would be like, what would cops do if the world suddenly became an honest place, right? We wouldn't need most of them. And the lawyers, just imagine if Tesla really eliminates auto accidents, we're going to have a whole industry of ambulance chasers who are chasing their butts here because they won't have any work to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think one of the revelations that most people come to at some point in their lives is that food is medicine. And, you know, you're healthy or you're not healthy based largely on your lifestyle, what you eat and what you do. And yeah, you know, we're putting people who sell weed in jail still in the US. And yet the guys who sell you that Coke, the Coca-Cola, are still walking around free. And I think they should flip that, really. You know, the people who sell these, you know, quote unquote foods that are basically industrial chemicals and genetically modified sweeteners all mixed together are really accounting for most of the illness in the country. So now I did it again. I ventured way beyond my expertise in finance and probably made a lot of people mad, but I really think that's true. And, you know, as part of taking responsibility for yourself, in the you know, the prepping framework, you know, you get your finances in order, you get your place in your community straightened out, and you take care of yourself health-wise. And one of the ways you do that is by eating actual food instead of industrial chemicals and exercising, et cetera, et cetera. So, your lifestyle is really the single most important thing you need to learn about and to master, I think, beyond finance, beyond politics, beyond anything else.
Hey, we've said so many times on the show, to survive financially, you got to first survive physically. And most of the foods that are sold, prepared foods, not prepared, but processed foods, and all of these sugar-based things, and all this stuff. It's just poison. Mm-hmm. And we have this epidemic of type 2 diabetes directly attributable to sugar, and fatty liver disease, all these other things, which I had been afflicted with. And I really, after COVID, dramatically changed my diet. All my numbers are like close to normal now, John, because I just decided I'm not putting this crap into my mouth again. I'll have an ice cream on a rare occasion, maybe, but it's not part of my regular diet. That's for sure.
Yeah. But now the question is, now that you're healthy and the lockdown is over, what are you going to do with all those black masks? You might have to start robbing liquor stores or something.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have bought them. Well, I knew when I placed the order and I hit purchase that the epidemic was over. Okay, this is just my timing. I always warn you out there: if you follow my investment advice, you will lose money. You're forewarned in the short run. The long run, you'll do just fine, but in the short run, you might have some problems. But hey, speaking of these type of things, we've got the equivalent of these hollow junk food calories, the supplemental unemployment insurance that's added $300 a week to everybody getting unemployment, which has made it in many states. It's giving you an incentive not to work, and then they can't figure out why unemployment is staying high. Milton Friedman, when they passed this bill for unemployment insurance, I think back during FDR, said this was the most successful program ever because it did exactly what it said, which was to ensure that we would have unemployment. And here it is, his dying words coming true. So we got GOP governors, I think in Texas, a couple of other states are saying, hey, businesses are telling us they can't hire people, yet unemployment's high, get rid of it. And then that ties in with like Chipotle agreeing to pay their employees $15 an hour now. What's your take on this, John?
Yeah, how do we have a labor shortage now? That's the weirdest outcome of all the weird outcomes that we've seen in the last year and a half. That we are still partially locked down. A lot of places are still closed or operating at half capacity, and yet they can't find anybody to work for them. So yeah, I think you're right. A big part of it is the fact that we're paying people more than usual via the unemployment insurance program. And for a lot of people, that means, you can go to work at McDonald's or someplace like that and make pretty much what you will make if you stay home and be unemployed. So why bother? Or even if you make slightly more on, some basic service job or something out there, you got to make a lot more than just a free check that comes in every month to make it worthwhile. So yeah, that's another thing that's going to have to go away as the economy starts to expand here or starts to normalize. We'll just go back to normal levels of unemployment insurance. But in the meantime, it's got a lot of companies scrambling and doing things they never thought they'd do, like signing bonuses.
Paying for $50 for an interview.
Yeah.
So along these lines, remember, we had this eviction moratorium, and a judge just struck it down, amazingly enough, saying that the CDC, I never understood, why did the CDC become responsible for issuing an eviction moratorium? That's certainly not within their ambit. That's a legal issue. That's not a health issue. But they, with this twisted, attenuated logic, said, we can't have people living out on the streets. And it took a year to get it struck down, but it finally is struck down. I think that the judge's decision is pretty much bulletproof. And I haven't heard that there's been a stay, but this whole thing was crazy. And that's why we have a housing shortage, why we have an employment employee shortage and why there's a housing shortage, because there's no foreclosures that can take place. So millions of homes that should be in foreclosure in the process right now, and that would force their owners to sell them, are held in suspension. So all of this is just shows what happens when the government intervenes in a market. There's winners and losers. In this case, the winners were people who either couldn't afford to pay their rent or realized they didn't have to any longer. So they just hung around and didn't pay rent. And then there were the people who couldn't afford their mortgage or didn't want to pay it anymore because they're upside down, and they just stopped paying their mortgage. And that held back supply. They otherwise probably would have had to sell their homes. Part of why we've got this booming housing market. It's just interesting when the government picks winners and losers. They're not always who you think they're going to be.
Yeah. Well, they're usually people that benefit the government in some way. That's the iron law of market interventions, is it usually helps the contributors in some way. But yeah, okay, if we just end all this stuff right away here, then it's going to be reasonably easy to forgive the government and the public health network and big pharma even for all of this stuff. But if this drags on for another year, it's going to be unforgivable. We really need to get back to normal, because even just in sheer numbers of deaths, I think we caused more deaths with these lockdowns than we did. Yeah. Than the virus would have caused if there were no lockdowns, because this was brutal. There were drug overdoses and child abuse and spousal abuse and suicides and probably drunk driving accidents.
In poverty, millions of people in poverty.
Yeah.
That's the worst disease of all, because then your healthcare, your state of health really goes down when you're poverty stricken. The lockdowns will go down as one of the biggest blunders, failures in the history of government. When all is said and done, that is assuming that there's any internet channels left who can actually state the truth without being censored. Maybe you just won't know about it. Hey, finally, now this is a really cool story here. Brooklyn Borough President, mayoral candidate Eric Adams. He's a former NYPD captain, African-American. He's a Democrat. He's running on a law and order platform. And I just want to know, John, what's the world coming to when a Democrat actually embraces rule of law, public order, locking up wrongdoers? He's going to lobby the state to amend their bail liberalization law, which just allows judges zero discretion, and they have to release recidivist offenders. Guy seems like he's in the lead. He's beating Andrew Yang, and he does agree that the rich need to be taxed more, which that would be a good thing, except there are less rich now than there were a year ago in New York City, and there'll probably be even more should he get reelected or should he get elected. But and it's like it's really a helter-skelter world here.
Yeah. Well, that's a good profile for a candidate in today's New York City, right? A black ex-cop law and order Democrat who wants to raise taxes. You're covering a lot of bases there. And so he should be able to cobble together a majority if he's in any way articulate. So we'll see. But yeah, New York City, I lived there for 10 years in the 1980s and loved it. That was just a great place to live. And so, I'm rooting for New York to get its act together and continue to be that amazing city that it is. But it's got a lot of problems, many of which are its own fault, got to say.
Yeah, it's basically bankrupt now. De Blasio, 2 terms of him have virtually destroyed the place, denuded and totally neutered the police force. So they're kind of reduced to writing traffic tickets. Got rid of like all these successful anti-crime initiatives, anti-gang initiatives, anti-street crime initiatives. All these things de Blasio destroyed that helped, and that's not to say there weren't abuses. We all know that. And a lot of it was just not reasonable, unforgivable. But like the sacking, allowing them to sack Macy's, to loot Macy's, that's like the equivalent of the burning of the library in Alexandria. That was like it was a beacon, a merchant's beacon. I don't know, and maybe that's the end of it all. I'm not sure, but that's the end of this show. Make sure you go over to dollarcollapse.com and sign up for John's newsletter, sign up for ours, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Send me your emails for John. We will address them just like we did for our good friend, our listener, Alexander P. And John, we will pick up next week, and I'm sure there will be no shortage of material.
No doubt. See you, Kerry.
The Financial Survival Network.